Scooby-Doo clones, live-action cartoons, sci-fi fare, but now it's Saturday morning in Hollywood with animated adaptations of some famous faces. I'm Victor, and straight out of the Gen Experience, animation was fair play with the power of celebrity and their reach to the mass audiences. Popular music groups, legendary personalities, and even classic Hollywood icons from film and TV caricatured for the Saturday morning cartoon crowd. Hollywood finds a way, and Saturdays from the mid-60s into the 80s were home to legit superstars in animated fashion. If you're a fan, then please click that like, and thank you to those who subscribe. Hollywood actors and characters have been appearing in animated form for almost 100 years. Warner Brothers and Disney would both feature famous stars or their iconic personas in various shorts. It was in the late 60s. The first Gen Xers were still in diapers, and a few favorite celebrities had made their way to Saturday morning cartoons. The Beatles cartoon in '65, Golden Age Hollywood Laurel and Hardy and Abbott and Costello in 1967, and the Three Stooges cartoon in 1965 were created more for late boomers, and their animation style even seemed rooted in an earlier time, like Rocky and Bullwinkle's simplistic designs. These Hollywood animated adaptations of legendary musical groups and classic Hollywood comedy troupes would be rare in reruns, but they aired right along new favorites rising at the time: Space Ghost, Birdman, and Jonny Quest. These would thankfully be on endless repeat through most of the 70s, as a new wave of Saturday morning cartoons began to reign supreme for millions of kids as they entered their Gen Experience. But perhaps you're one of the earliest, and you even remember the debut of? Like the Beatles, this was an animated adaptation of the musical powerhouse of the Jackson 5. Tito, Jermaine, Jackie, Marla, and Michael were not immune to the call of Saturday morning cartoons. Well, at least their father, Joseph Jackson, wasn't. In 1971, the Jackson 5 cartoon began a run on Saturday mornings along with the likes of Woody Woodpecker, Heckle and Jekyll, and the Bugaloos, another musical group. Sort of. Kicking off this animated adventure was none other than Diana Ross. Yeah, who here ever thought she would not only appear as herself in Saturday morning cartoons, but voice it as well, the only one to do so. All five brothers did appear live action in the show, but only at the beginning, turning into their animated counterparts or clips from their performances. Making numerous appearances throughout the series was none other than Berry Gordy. This character would appear to start the action or get the boys involved in some crazy publicity stunt. Luckily for all of us, as in the Beatles cartoon before it, their music was the main attraction, and 2 Jackson 5 songs were used in each episode. After cancellation, the show would only rerun in 1984, riding on Michael's sparkly coattails of success. This cartoon inspired the launch of the Jackson Variety Show, starring both the Jackson brothers and sisters in 1976. Because it was the 70s, and that's just what you did, not unlike the next musical band of brothers. The Osmonds weren't too busy to lend their voices to their cartoon counterparts. The Osmonds were another musical family of brothers, not from Detroit, but from Salt Lake City. The stylized designs and bright colors were probably the only thing these two had in common, besides the creators, Rankin and Bass. But the Osmonds was only one season of 17 episodes in 1972, while the Jackson 5 were into their second. Another show where a sister gets the shaft, Marie does not appear, but in a popular 70s trope, there's Fuji, the talking dog. The group performs together each show, while Donnie or Jimmy get a solo performance because, well, they're the ones that usually cause the trouble that make the catalyst for each episode's adventures around the world. This generation's firstborn were just starting their Gen Experience by this time and may very well remember both the Jackson 5 and the Osmonds, although reruns of these were almost non-existent. Backing up just a bit, another kind of celebrity, the athlete, would find fame on Saturday morning as well. No matter the media, iconic personalities had no holds barred policy on creating cartoons to further expand their brand, their fame, and their own mass marketing. In a way, a cartoon was a celebrity's social media platform, and the Harlem Globetrotters did it twice. Or more accurately, 3 times. Wait, maybe 5. Well, we'll figure that all out in the end. The first entry for these global sports superstars was in 1970. Caricatures of popular players Meadowlark Lemon, Curly Neal, Geese Osby, Gip Gibson, Bobby Joe Mason, and Pablo Robertson played basketball for their lives. Okay, the The stakes weren't that high, but usually it was the bad guys they would have to battle on the court. And their fancy shooting and floor routines won the day, all while a hip tune would accompany the action. The Globetrotters bus was driven by a character named Granny, and along for the ride, their dog, Dribbles. Even if the Globetrotters weren't a band, this cartoon did get an album release in 1970, where 2 of the singles were released, as well as 2 non-album singles from the show, one entitled Everybody's Got Hot Pants. Classic 70s. Back in Hollywood proper, with some Saturday morning entries based on TV shows and movies, we start with an animated adaptation where the actors didn't portray themselves like in Abbott and Costello or Laurel and Hardy, but performed character roles in a story, some even serialized, like this one. I remember a number of Charlie Chan movies from the classic era of Hollywood, often played by various actors, and not usually anyone of Asian descent, but Charlie Chan was a respected detective. However, I don't remember him being so fruitful. The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan from 1972 is an animated mystery cartoon loosely based on the popular Hollywood titular movie character. Although the kids are the stars, including Jodie Foster as Ann Chan, there was also that crazy, wacky car of theirs. Unlike other mystery-solving teens and their sidekicks at the time, Charlie Chan is part of each episode. His 10 kids and their dog Choo Choo aid or obstruct their father in whatever the newest case might be. I would be remiss not to mention that this clan was also a band. This was big that year, and although the trope would get tired, right now was the heyday of cartoon ensembles who played, well, as musical ensembles. What do you think inspired so many young Gen Xers to plug in out in the garage themselves? From the big screen to the small, I know we've covered sitcoms that jumped the shark by creating Saturday morning animated spin-offs in an earlier show on the channel. But the Addams Family's humble beginnings in The New Yorker afforded a 1964 to 1966 live-action TV show, which this cartoon series has clear connections with. Although Hanna-Barbera has previously parodied the Dark Family with the similar Gruesomes, the neighbors to the Flintstones, the real Addams Family received a proper tryout for their own show as guest stars on the new Scooby-Doo movies, because who didn't? That 1972 episode saw the ghoulish group much like we would see them in their own macabre Saturday morning series starting in 1973. Although one season, their success can't be denied. Various iterations of Charles Addams cartoon strip characters have continued throughout the following decades, including a 1990s animated incarnation, as well as animated movies in the 21st century. The Addams are doing just fine, and I always thought it would be the Munsters who wouldn't die. Clearly based on a movie, or more accurately a film franchise, Return to the Planet of the Apes from 1975 could be considered a disconnected continuation of the canceled live-action TV series as well. Wait a minute. Are those bodies strung up upside down? Oh, that's my kind of Saturday. The producers were hell-bent on conquest of their apes in any way possible. This animated spiritual successor is more in line with the movies than the TV show, and even included additional content leveraged from the original books, like technology and automobiles that the movie's original budget couldn't support. Familiar, as 3 human astronauts again crash land on a future Earth and interact with recognizable friends and foes from the film series, including both the savage humans and even the Brent and Nova characters. Although the 80s would continue the trend of cartoons based on live-action films and franchises, what makes this and even the Chan Clan different is that while they may find inspiration from previous source material, the animation was not designed to accompany merchandise as advertising to sell it. Yes, there was Apes merchandise, very unique for any film at the time. But it wasn't until after 1982 when films, even R-rated, would get into the plastic plaything market. And it was us, Gen X, who were their eager audience. Sports greats going animated didn't stop with the Harlem Globetrotters, and between their scrimmage with Scooby-Doo and their own new show coming up in 1979, another celebrity sports personality made his mark in what could be the most head-scratcher of them all in 1977. When I think Muhammad Ali, I do not think of Saturday morning cartoons, but apparently he did, and to continue his reign and his own brand marketing, I Am the Greatest, The Adventures of Muhammad Ali debuted in 1977. I get he was unmatched in many ways, but I don't know about you, that title right there gives off some serious self-absorbed vibes. He did his own voice, but I don't believe he would have allowed anyone else. There he was, getting in people's faces while facing danger along with his niece and nephew to bring the kid viewers in, of course. This 22-episode, one-season series is memorable, but not sure for all the right reasons. I wouldn't consider it the greatest of them all. Would you? The Stooges were back, and they got an upgrade from their 60s cartoon when they returned also in 1977, firmly planted in the Gen experience. New versions of the characters were tested on, what else, the new Scooby-Doo movies in 1973. Although their animation models were simple with all three Stooges in matching jumpsuits, the animation is more modern and matches the 70s vibe of cartoons at the time, including a little more realism. But just a little. The three Hollywood physical comedy legends are more proportioned in size, and although evolved, they retain their telltale traits that make them unmistakable. The new Scooby-Doo movies would rerun constantly through the decade, where we could hear Curly's voice either here or on Jabberjaw.
Like me.
But it's 1977, with Star Wars All the Rage, the Stooges' own reboot, were 11-minute episodes within a larger show called The Skatebirds. Remember them? Popular enough to be slapped on lunchboxes and patches and stickers, these live-action costume characters similar to Banana Splits would introduce cartoons, including the new Robonic Stooges. You heard that right, Robonic. The three Stooges went all cyborg this time around, and in 1978, when those birds flew the coop, Moe, Curly, and Larry got their own half-hour show. Robonic is obviously a play on robotic, but is it mashed up with bionic or moronic? You decide. The Stooges weren't the only ones to return later in a second attempt. The Globetrotters also got an upgrade in 1979. After their original show, the Harlem Globetrotters, got canceled, they met Mystery Incorporated. Not once, but 3 times the team were guests on that show between 1972 and 1973. But they were in good company alongside the Stooges and the Addams Family, who got a boost from Scooby and the Gang. The ball was in their court, and since the airwaves were full of them, the Globetrotters decided to go all superhero. It seemed like everyone was doing it, and it's no surprise that missions were received from a talking basketball device, and although their superpowers were a bit out of this world, if you don't remember Sweet Lou Dunbar pulling an endless supply of gadgets from his immense afro that were perfect for the current predicament, then you didn't even have a Gen experience. Originating in the 1930s as shorts before feature films, the Our Gang series of live-action comedies starred a handful of adorable children in roles that became more iconic than any influencer today. Born of the silent generation, the Little Rascals, as they were also known, grew in popularity when their brand of Great Depression fun was broadcast over and over again as home televisions became more prevalent. This meant that at some point a reboot was imminent, and why not an animated adaptation of their own in 1982? They had already made a short jump to animation in 1979 with a rarely discussed Little Rascals Christmas special for NBC. Saturday mornings in Hollywood was still a thing in the 80s, but would slowly change to almost full-time movie-based programs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Usual Suspects starred in this adorable one-season animated outing. 22 episodes with Spanky, Darla, Buckwheat, Butch, Porky, Alfalfa, and Pete, voiced by Optimus Prime himself, Peter Cullen. Interesting to note, little of the characters' design style was altered from their original incarnation, yet they clearly lived in a more contemporary time, complete with computers. This cartoon may have lived longer than one season, but Hanna-Barbera did not have the rights to the actors' child likenesses and were sued by the 3 living original performers, and having to settle out of court brought the gavel down on any more episodes.
Good night.
Military police corps, bouncer, and eventual movie and TV star, Mr. T was an entrepreneur and knew how to market himself. With his trademark mohawk and jewelry, his scowl could scare the bejesus out of anyone. But in reality, Mr. T was an optimistic force. Even with his over-the-top aesthetic, the man was always out there pushing positivity and support of what was right, even joining Nancy Reagan to just say no. So although it may have sounded peculiar at first, no one batted an eye when Mr. T's cartoon debuted and was on the air for 3 seasons, starting in 1983. The same year, B.A. Baracus debuted on the A-Team. Appearing live to start the show and end it with a moral lesson, the premise that he was either the coach or den mother for a U.S. gymnastics team didn't seem so far-fetched. What was never far away was danger. And Mr. T's brute force, along with the agility and prowess of his athletes, subdued the villains wherever their bus took them. The young character Spike, who idolized and dressed just like Mr. T, helped the show relate to younger kids, but Mr. T also needed a tough pooch. Bulldozer, complete with mohawk, did the trick. There were no toys for this cartoon. which is odd because there would be for the A-Team. It was not designed to sell a preconceived toy line, which was about to become the norm for cartoons. But you'd be a fool not to try his cereal that outlasted this show by 8 years.
Can I have some Mr. T cereal? Okay! I pity the poor fool. Don't eat my cereal.
Be like Pee-wee and have yourself a bowl every day. Or a plate. Saturday mornings from Hollywood would blow up in the 80s with many new cartoons based on hit movies, with droids and Ewoks from Star Wars, Teen Wolf, RoboCop, and Karate Kid. The trend would also continue to weekday cartoons with the likes of the real Ghostbusters and even Rambo. No matter the day of the week, most of these cartoons came with a dedicated toy line. Some of them were even designed for the sole purpose to sell an action figure or vehicle. Movie and celebrity cartoons would of course continue into the 90s, but with a lot less pressure to buy. They'd come a long way from the Beatles and Abbott Costello cartoons in the latter half of the 60s as the curtain just started to raise on Gen X, but it wouldn't be long before we owned that Gen experience. There's so much more Saturday morning to discover, so stay with me as we try to uncover what we may have forgotten or simply can't believe existed. There is even more great content on the channel, so now why not go watch as you wait for our next show. Thank you so much for those who engage with the comments, click the like, and better yet, press subscribe. Peruse the store and come back soon. Until next time.
Wow, that was fast.